It's time to rethink how we approach cybersecurity because the reality is modern cyber attackers are already past your initial defenses. ExtraHop helps your security team find and eradicate advanced threats before real damage is done. Protect your enterprise and customers with better defense. Learn more about how ExtraHop stops advanced threats at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra, HOP.
Managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management, trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100. Today, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Josh Marpet and Tyler Robinson. Don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings by visiting securityweekly.com/on-demand. Also, don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feeds and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. You can also join our mailing list, Discord server, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms. All right, gentlemen, time to break into some articles. The Gartner article's towards the end, which talks about spending in 2023, and I want to dig into that article a little bit after the previous segment around the security money segment. This first article talks about the disconnects between CISOs and boards. Really? Well, I couldn't see that one coming.
I don't know where that came. That's left field.
Hey, but at least cybersecurity is being talked about at the board. We got 2/3 now, just not about the right things being talked about, I guess.
Right. But it was interesting. So a couple of the quick deep dives into the report. So this was done by Proofpoint and MIT Sloan, which is why I pulled this one in here because they had a good, really independent third-party source with MIT Sloan in here. Almost 2/3 of board members said their organizations are at risk of a material cyber attack in the next 12 months. But by contrast, less than half of CISOs said their organizations were at risk for such an attack. So let's just think about that for a second. The board is actually over-predicting the potential risk of a cyber attack than the CISOs are. So it's just an interesting way to think about it, because I would think the opposite is that the board would be like, no, we're not in that big of an issue, and the CISOs would have a higher number. It's actually the opposite.
Well, it's because of the SEC ruling, the SEC regulation, where the SEC said you have to have somebody with cybersecurity expertise on the board, right? And so finally, the board is required to have some visibility into the world of InfoSec. And so now you've got them, it's October, it's Security Awareness Month. So they're having awareness of cybersecurity. And so that's why their awareness of the possibility of a material cyber attack is high. And CISOs have, well, we're just doing the same thing we've always been. So whether you're good or bad,
that flood, right? Like they're finally getting the initial shock and impact that we've all had for decades of, hey, this is a real thing. These are real problems. We've lost that shock and awe value that just no longer, hits us the same way. So now we're letting them catch up, and we've got the same consistent problems. I think a lot of this is probably just communication and the way in which they're seeing the initiatives happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other stat, which I have to know whether it's the same 2/3 and 1/2. So more than 2/3 of board members said they see eye to eye with their CISOs, while CISOs, only half of CISOs say they see eye to eye with their board members. So I wonder if that 2/3 half are the same overlap. I would love to know, is that disconnect for both of those bullet points the exact same 2/3 and 50%?
I bet I would almost bet money on that.
Yeah, it's probably more than likely. It's once that SEC ruling came out, the boards that cared about that went, okay, get the CISO in here. We need to talk. And the CISO came in and chatted with them, and they said, well, what are the risks? And there's risks of ransomware, and there's risks of phishing, and there's risks of insider threat. And he went through the same list of risks we deal with every day. Okay, Tyler Robinson. Sorry, Tyler, I bust on you, but I have to. all of these risks that we know about implicitly, and some of them they've never heard of or never penetrated their skulls. And so they're like, oh, well, we see eye to eye with the CISO. Meanwhile, on the other side of the coin, the CISO's like, this is the first time they've ever asked me to talk to them.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Article number 2 is the fallout from last week's discussion around Joe Sullivan and the whole verdict with Joe, right? I got on my soapbox about this last week, but this article comes out and says, so now you don't want to become a CISO anymore. Like, what would happen if a bunch of cybersecurity people decided, you know what? I don't want to be a CISO anymore. So this was an interesting article on the take of if the CISO decided not to be a CISO anymore and nobody wanted to be a CISO because it's not worth the personal potential risk, like what would happen? So this article was just very intriguing to me because this is one of the potential downsides of the Joe Sullivan verdict 2 weeks ago.
Well, I think you add another layer to that complexity too. So all these CISOs that don't want to be CISOs or people that were aspiring maybe to get to the CISO level, you've got boards now that are required to have people with cybersecurity experience, which is going to be an influx of people. Like, where are they even going to get those people to begin with? Well, maybe from the CISO side of this. And now we've got boards that are requiring security without CISOs there to direct security, with people that are underfunded and under-resourced trying to do the security. That doesn't lend itself to a very good program overall.
And you're also going to have CISOs that are going to be like skyrocketed from CISO to board member, and they're now effectively over top of the CIO who they reported to. And it's going to be interesting. Interesting.
That's a great way to put it.
We'll go with that. So then at the end, he's basically like, okay, board, CEO, COO, CISOs, everybody, like, what does this mean going forward? I love the context of this article, which is why I pulled it in, is because this is the potential downside. And so as these boards start thinking about what they're going to do to get their arms around security, okay, CEOs and CFOs and others, just understand the up-leveling of the executive you now need to handle, because I think that is one of the potential downsides of this, is that if nobody wants to do it, you're going to have to spend a lot more to get people in the chair that want to take that risk on going forward. So it was just a great follow-up to last week's segment. All right. Which cybersecurity metrics matter most to CISOs today? So I always look at these articles because there's this long ongoing debate about metrics and what metrics and all this other stuff. So I always bring these articles in not because they're good. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're like, really? That's what you consider metrics? Like, are we even speaking the same language sometimes when we start thinking about metrics? This article goes in a lot of different directions. So I'm going to warn you now before you read it. Like, it goes in a couple different paths. It does, towards the middle and the end, start to wrap itself around the concept of metrics and issues with metrics and some of the things you should think about, which I think are valid. And I'm going to start at tool-driven metrics often lack context. Really? You don't say.
I'm so shocked. This is my shocked face.
Right. I'm so shocked. Of course they don't, right? So I think this is one of the biggest challenges around metrics in general is you got to bring the data together. You've got to integrate the data. You need to bring it together, consolidate it into a single view. Because as a CISO, if you're running 60, 75 different security products, and you're looking at just the tool-driven metrics out of those 60 to 75 tools, of course they don't have context because they're all in their little isolated bubbles, right? This is why integrated risk management and risk management systems are so important to really getting your arms around this concept of metrics, is because you need to integrate and consolidate this data down and then look at, well, what are the metrics I want to measure? I actually submitted a panel discussion for RSA conference around human risk management. What are the right metrics? Because here's what we know on our side of the industry. click rates, report rates, and training participation are not moving the needle. They're just not. They are not driving security awareness engagement. They're not. So if those aren't the metrics anymore, what are the metrics, right? And so people have to think about what are the things they want to measure and how do they want to measure them, and bringing all that stuff together. Otherwise, none of this happens. Sorry, soapbox.
Yeah, no. And it's a good soapbox because you can overwhelm yourself with measurements and metrics of various sorts from, what'd you say, 50 or 60 tools? That's easy. And now you've got analysis paralysis because I don't know what to analyze. I don't know what's important. I don't know what to look at. I've got 70,000 alerts a minute coming in from this tool and this set of tools or this SIM or whatever. My Splunk bill is out of control. My, and Tyler's still getting in. What the hell is going on? Okay. And in reality, if you looked at your a very small subset of your firewall logs and a very small subset of your IDS logs and a very small subset of all of your logs, you would have much more actionable intelligence than if you look at everything all at once.
No, this is what we've been talking about for weeks, right? From a CISO standpoint, your ability to integrate, provide some of the overlap on your tooling and get some of the shelfware out where you're not leveraging more than 10 to 15% of those tools, but you need the capability. Like that's where you start to get back a lot of your resource funding and doing a good job there for the resources in order to evaluate and do the integrations and get the tools deployed properly. Because at the end of the day, default configurations on all these tools suck. So from a CISO standpoint, in order to get their return on investment, they really do have to have the integrators and the analysts to configure those and tune those, and then have people to follow up and get that mean time to detection and mean time to recovery piece.
Yeah. So here's how we position it. I look at the use case. What is the big objective you're trying to solve for as a CISO in your organization? Because this is going to vary organization to organization. One of them that we know right now is account takeover and all the issues around MFA, right? Multi-factor authentication breaches with Twilio, like the whole SMS MFA thing is all. So CISOs are trying to get their arms around it. Like we hear this directly from our CISO advisory board and other folks that we talk to in the industry. All right, so think about that. I want to address account takeover. What data do I need to understand whether accounts have been taken over and be able to solve around? Well, I need access into my identity and access management vendors, my multi-factor authentication vendors, my password managers potentially, my privileged access management solutions. And oh, by the way, I probably need some external breach data to look to see when the last time credentials were compromised, and then compare activity going on across all my other IAM solutions to see, do I see some weird, malicious, crazy behavior going on? Like, that's a way to get your arm around metrics, because now I know what I'm trying to solve for, so I have an objective. I can look at the data, and now I can start looking at different measurements across those systems that I can correlate against, and guess what? That becomes a set of metrics that I can start to report against. Like
baselines.
A very simple example. As a CISO, how many of those do I have on at any given time? Do I have 3 to 5?
3 of them aren't acquired, right?
Right.
Like by the same company and rolled out. And
So 3 to 5 objectives every quarter I need to solve for. That should be driving your metrics discussion. Because there's a line in this article that I don't agree with, and I'm gonna say it. CISOs should start tracking activity-based metrics, including clock rates on phishing training emails, as they help strengthen training program and contribute to a more effective human firewall. False.
No, they do not.
It does not.
That is BS.
It does not. This is what we've been tracking as metrics, and they're not working. Participation rate, click rate, reporting rates are not the metrics we should be tracking.
Oh my God.
Right. That's why I pulled these articles in.
Yeah, they're setting up for a punitive metric, and that's just not appropriate.
Correct.
Look, what you track with your humans You want to talk about human metrics, that's a whole different subject. But you want to talk about your technical metrics, okay, your machine metrics and your tool metrics and everything else. At the end of the day, just what you said, Matt, you're tracking for building baselines of normal behavior. Because if you can track your baselines of normal behavior and look for your anomalies, you're going to get 95 to 99% of your problems right there. Okay. Yes, you're still going to have that obscure, crazy, weird problem that's going to hide, massive APT monster, whatever. Okay, fine. But 95 to 90% of your everyday problems are going to be solved by simply having good baselines that are done through very solid math. Okay. Now you want to talk human metrics. Don't talk about clock rate and click rate and how fast they're doing it and whether they're paying attention. Track whether they're engaged. Track whether your training matters to anybody. Track whether you're teaching them proper things. Like, how do you stop? When I do teaching for security awareness, I don't bother doing corporate security awareness. I do, how are you going to get scammed at home? And how's your grandma going to get scammed at home? Why? Because then they'll have their critical faculties engaged for the exact same scams they have run at work. Mm-hmm. And make it personal to them.
Yeah.
Oh, you gavolt. Some of these people. You just want to be punitive to your people? Great. That's wonderful. You're going to lose all your people.
Yeah. Stick mentalities can work, but in this environment, I'm not sure that's the route I want to go. I'd rather find the carrot. Just saying.
Yeah. Would you rather work in that environment? Like, that's the thing.
Right.
Like, I don't understand why people would want to create the environment in which they have to work for an environment they won't want.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That's a false logic tree.
Yep.
Reward them. If somebody brings you an email they think is phished, here's a donut. Here's free lunch at the cafeteria. Whatever. Reward them. Okay.
That would boom Texas's economy. We have donut shops everywhere.
You get the point.
Shops. Yes, I know what you're saying. Reward them for good behavior, and then use the risky behaviors as training ways to train them to improve them.
Education,
right? Yes, use education based on the behaviors, not just blanket training for the sake of blanket training. Anyways, soapbox again. Oh, I love this. All right, next article. Cybersecurity survey of state CISOs identify many positive trends. So, I mean, we are making some progress in certain areas. This one was done by Deloitte and one of the affiliations, NASCIO, the National Association of Chief Information Officers, released their survey. All 50 states now have a CISO, which was not the case a year or so ago. So now all the states have CISOs in place. So that's a positive movement, right? But as we all know, they're struggling with a lot of the same things other CISOs are. Talent gap issues, digital transformation in the state agencies. Like, they're still struggling with a lot of the same challenges with smaller budgets. So there's still some work to do, but at least having a CISO at each of the state levels is a positive trend.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things. We do have a lot of engagement and a lot of money starting to flow via CISA, via DHS, a lot of initiatives via the states. The thing that we still are lacking, and seeing all this money makes me a little worried, is we're going to see a big influx of vendors and tools being tried to get shelf-lived. Rather than the resources in which we need to make a lot of these initiatives happen. We do not have the talent, we do not have the expertise at the salary dollars that many of these programs are going to try and leverage. Yeah. And so until we get a program in place between DHS, CISA, the states, where they're doing contracting through some of the consultancy agencies and some of the veterans to try and scale, train, and or fill those gaps until they're able to source that themselves, this is going to have an influx of tooling that can't get used, and that is never a good spend, especially for federal dollar.
Yeah.
Well, that's already happening. I mean, you're familiar with FedRAMP, right? Did you know that there's State Ramp?
I did not.
There is a State Ramp organization that's a nonprofit that actually takes the exact same requirements as FedRAMP and does it for state organizations. And there's several states that have signed on to the point that if you don't meet effectively the FedRAMP standards, you're not being a CSP, a cloud service provider, to these states. I think it's 8 states now, and it's rapidly expanding. So Texas, by the way, is one of them, I'm fairly certain. Awesome. So that idea that the exact same vendors that are going after FedRAMP dollars for certification, for accreditation, for the tools to make sure you're doing it, blah blah blah, they're going right after these states as well. So Tyler, well done. You're very correct, sir.
Yes, you are. And where are those dollars going? So Gartner publishes out its growth numbers for security. States that remote work, zero trust, and cloud are still driving cyber spend. Now, here's where I want to dig in a little bit. Gartner's predicting that we'll see 11.3% increase in 2023. I'm not sure. Like, when I talk to CISOs right now, their budgets are not increasing by 11.3%. They're staying pretty flat.
I would say they're buckling down by 11.3%.
They are.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm talking to CISOs and their budgets are either frozen or staying pretty flat, they're making trade-off decisions. Like, in order to invest here, I have to divest here, right? How do you get to 11.3% when we're hearing pretty flat year over year budgets? This number seems really, really high to me. I hear you that you're spending on certain technologies because of remote work and because of cloud, but I don't think that lifts all budgets. I think they stay flat.
Well, they said
the only places I'm seeing spend this level of money are the places that have really buckled down subscription and tooling and gotten rid of consolidated a lot of that shelfware or rolled over those subscriptions. And then they've actually cut entire programs and rolled in new FTEs under different places. I think there is capital spending happening for cybersecurity specifically, but that is usually because they've buckled down somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah, it's shifting. It's not growing. I agree with Tyler 100%. I'm not seeing this kind of growth. I'm seeing companies, agencies, enterprises, monster to tiny. They're all going, how do we make do with less? And so they're shifting the dollars. That I would believe. We're not going to do a VPN provider. We're going to do a firewall provider. I don't that has a VPN. Whatever. Or a zero trust system. But we're going to take away that network segmentation system we had, and we're going to go with the zero trust segmentation instead. Again, shifting the dollars, not growing it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with this, and I wonder. And I'll be blunt. I wonder which vendor requested this.
Yeah, I look at the categories. The categories make sense to me. Like, cloud security will grow by 26.8%. Application security up 24.7%. There's our cloud and our app. Data privacy up 16.9%. There's my app data. Infrastructure protection up 16%. Identity and access management up 15%. There's my app user data, all in the top. But they're all 15+% up, which means I'm cutting that same amount from somewhere else. What I didn't see in this article is like which areas are going to go through major spending cuts. That's just to get to the 11%. And all of us agree, I don't even know how we get to the 11%. So there's major shaving going on somewhere else in these security programs.
I couldn't agree more. I think that security programs are shaving massively in a lot of ways. Now, are they shifting? Are they adding more in cloud security? I would also add, by the way, that I don't know, AWS has been adding more and more security features into their packages. So you're getting more security, but you're paying the same or paying a slight uptick. So, but there's no choice on that. It's not like I'm buying a specific new tool from them for security. It's just part of what I get. So are they counting that in their uptick in spending? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know how we get to that number. All right, let's round this out. My last article, 15 actionable tips to stop over talking and listen more.
I'm not answering that one.
Personal improvement.
One of the 15 tips is to take a pause.
Like, how do you answer that? Like, I'm going to talk more about it. No. Wait. Ask more questions.
Yes.
Hey, Matt, how do you feel about this?
Yes. Tip number 4, embrace the silence, which is why I just stopped to see if any of you two would pick it up. Like that.
No, we picked it up. It's awkward.
Oh, it's awkward as hell.
So what you're telling me is I should talk more. Is that what you just told me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
If you have good things to say, I like to listen.
There are some good tips in here, by the way. And I think asking more questions is actually a really, really good one. Pauses are good, but asking questions to your team, to customers. Like I rather ask a question, sit back and listen to the answer and write a bunch of notes. I think it's a really good tip. There are some really good ones. Science of People, we've had these folks on. They do some great communications articles, and so when I see one, I like to pull them in because they have some really good tips for people that are trying to be, better at presenting, better at listening, better at speaking in general. And so I think these are just great articles for people who are struggling with this to read it. It's a quick read. 15 tips is a lot, but take them all with a grain of
There's some good
salt.
ones in here, though. Honestly, like I think from coming from a technical background, many of the technical folks will be real. If you're not one of the weird unicorns, like you typically don't like people as much. You're much more introverted. You've got things to overcome in order to be good presenters, to be very good communicators, and you have to overcome those if you want to move up and scale, understand the business, interact with the executive boards. Like all of those things are going to be skills that take you higher and make you more money. So there's incentive there if you learn how to do it properly. And a lot of that is psychology. I think, the cultural upbringing, understanding different cultures and why the communication happens differently, even down to introverts, extroverts, female, male, however you identify. Those things come into play, and you really have to understand the psychology behind people in order to properly communicate, not from your understanding of them, but to actually communicate effectively for them. And that's where that empathy and doing it for the right reasons, even if there are selfish reasons behind those, makes a huge difference. And so I think this one's, I actually have not heard of this, the Science of People, but this is really good.
Yeah, Paul and I interviewed Vanessa Van Edwards, who actually runs this organization. It's been a year and a half or so ago, maybe 2 years ago. But it's great because they do publish really good communication articles. So if anybody wants kind of the latest and greatest tips, go to Science of People. I think it's scienceofpeople.com. And she's got a lot of great tips out there, for sure. But I'm glad you. This is why I this is why I have my own podcast, because I do like to talk a bit. So
No.
Oh, thanks.
And that's it for Matt's Money Show.
That's it. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.